Today we're going to talk about attaching regulators to cylinders, both high and low pressure type cylinders. In this case we have oxygen and acetylene. Always remember, whenever dealing with fuel gases and oxygen especially, you want to make sure that you have approved fire extinguishers nearby. First thing, we want to make sure that the cylinder caps are on while you transport it over to, in this case, a carrier. This is a cylinder cart. It's approved. When you transport it over, you want to make sure that you chain it to the cylinder cart. If you're not going to put it on a cylinder cart, you want to make sure it's securely chained to some kind of a rigid structure in your shop or in the plant, and something like a pillar or a post, and then chain it. Okay, first thing you want to do is, once we've chained it inside the approved carrier, you want to take off the cylinder cap. Now when you take off the cylinder cap, put it someplace where you can find it. Too often you'll be tempted to move the cylinder without the cap if you can't find the cap when you're changing out the cylinders. We're going to remove the cylinder cap from the acetylene also, and we're going to put it in the same safe place. Once the cylinder cap is removed, you have to remember, during transportation there are holes in the cylinder cap, and you can get contaminants like dirt and debris through the holes, and during transportation or storage the debris might end up in the cylinder valve. You want to make sure you remove that, and there's a simple method for removing it. We call it cracking. Aim the cylinder away from people or flammable substances, turn your head and just open it momentarily. This blows out any debris that might have gotten inside the valve. On the fuel gas cylinders, we don't want to crack them because it is a fuel gas. What you might want to do is clean them out with a clean, dry cloth. Make sure there's no debris inside the valve. Always remember, debris is the enemy of a regulator. Okay, once the valve is cracked, the cylinders are secure, we want to attach the regulator. In this case, we're going to put the oxygen regulator. Whenever attaching a high pressure type regulator especially, you want to make sure that there's no damage, so inspect your regulator. Make sure that the T-screw is turned out, loose, so there's no pressure on the spring. You want to look at the gauges especially, make sure that the needles themselves are resting against the pin or where they're supposed to be, and there's no damage to the gauges. You want to inspect the inlet, make sure there's no debris, no damage to the inlet stem, and you want to check the outlet, both internally and externally. Once that's done, it's safe to put the regulator on the cylinder. Once the regulator is on the cylinder, you got it adjusted for your height. You want to tighten it with a smooth-jawed wrench. Once it's tight and snug, make sure the T-screw is screwed out. Now we're going to check the regulator for leaks. There are two common ways of checking for leaks. First way is with an approved bubble solution. The second way is a pressure test. But first we're going to put pressure on the regulator. When putting pressure on a high pressure type regulator from a high pressure type cylinder, you have to be extremely careful. With oxygen especially, because there's a phenomenon called the heat of recompression. You can actually create a fire internally in a regulator and cause a lot of damage if you don't do it properly. We've blown it out, made sure there's no dirt in the stem. We've inspected the regulator, there's no dirt in it. Now, what we're going to do is open up the cylinder, but we're going to do it slowly. First, we're going to make sure nobody's in front of the regulator or behind the regulator. And we're going to stand with the valve between us and the regulator itself, the cylinder valve. Turn my head slightly and turn it on very slowly. Once we have it on, I'll check, make sure we have pressure on the inlet gauge. Once we do, we're going to shut the cylinder off again. Now it leaves a bubble of compressed gas inside the regulator, And we'll be able to check this regulator for leaks from the inlet stem to the connection to the body of the regulator, the high pressure gauge connection, and the internal seating mechanism inside the regulator. If the pressure does not drop, I know I have no leaks. Now, the alternative method is using a bubble solution. I'll put a bubble solution near the inlet of the gauge, the inlet of the regulator, the body stem connection, and I'll observe. There are no bubbles, so there are no leaks. Let's back out the key, make sure it's loose, and we'll go on to the acetylene. I'm going to attach the acetylene regulator, same manner. And quite often, most fuel gas regulators are left-handed connections. So make sure you turn the nut in the proper direction. Again, tighten it with a smooth-jawed wrench until it's secure. Make sure the T-screw is screwed out and you've inspected the regulator for damage. And again, we're going to turn on the valve. We're going to turn it on slowly. However, since this is not a high pressure cylinder, most fuel gases are low pressure. We're not concerned about the heat of recompression. We're still going to be careful. We're going to check it for leaks. Again, there are two methods. The first method, we're going to use pressure. Make sure the T-screw again is turned out and loose. We're going to add a little bit of pressure to the regulator, shut it off, and we're going to observe the content gauge. In this case, the content gauge remains steady, and from this indication, there are no leaks. The alternative method, again, is by putting some bubble solution first on the gauge inlet, the inlet to the regulator, and the connection at the cylinder. Again, there are no leaks. I'm going to release the pressure on both gases, back it out, back out the T-screw again, and now we're ready to attach the rest of the equipment. We have no leaks, everything is secured, everything is clean and ready to go. So now the next step, we'll attach the hoses and the torch.